This is CNN Breaking News.
And welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We begin with breaking news in the world lead. This afternoon, the Biden administration released a long-awaited intelligence report on the grisly 2018 murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi, confirming the U.S. assessment that Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, personally approved the Saudi operation to capture or kill Khashoggi, who was a critic of the Saudi royal family. The report from the Director of National Intelligence asserted that it's, quote, highly unlikely that such an operation could have been carried out without the Crown Prince's authorization. The release of the report represents a shift from former President Trump, who, as you may recall, refused to fully accept or even acknowledge the assessment, which had been leaked to journalists, the assessment that the Crown Prince ordered the assassination, which involved use of a bone saw. In fact, Trump was quoted in Bob Woodward's book, Rage, bragging about protecting the Crown Prince from U.S. outrage over the killing, saying, quote, I saved his ass, unquote. The Biden administration has said the president will recalibrate the relationship with the U.S. ally. This afternoon, the administration said it is banning 76 Saudi individuals from visiting the U.S. and sanctioning those involved in the Khashoggi murder, including the Crown Prince's Rapid Intervention Force, except, notably, President Biden is imposing no restrictions and no sanctions against Crown Prince MBS himself, even though MBS is the man that the Biden administration says ordered this murder of a Washington Post journalist. MBS will not be punished, the Biden administration says, which prompts this uncomfortable question. Is the only difference between Trump bragging about saving MBS's ass and Biden acting as if he has no choice but to save MBS's ass? Is the only difference the words surrounding the decision? Either way, the ass of the man who ordered a barbaric slaughter of an American-based journalist has been saved. CNN's Alex Marquardt kicks off our coverage from Washington.
In black and white, the United States is saying that the de facto ruler of a close ally is responsible for murder. The intelligence community concluding Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman approved an operation in Istanbul, Turkey, to capture or kill Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The long-awaited unclassified report is barely 3 pages long and doesn't offer any new hard evidence of an order from MBS, as the prince is known. It's based on MBS's control of decision-making in the kingdom since 2017 and support for using violent measures to silence dissidents abroad. The report describes MBS as having absolute control of the kingdom's security and intelligence organizations. The team of assassins, the report says, includes people associated with top MBS Lieutenant Saud al-Qahtani and MBS's bodyguards, including Maher Mutreb, who traveled with MBS to the United States. This public intelligence report comes more than 2 years after the brutal murder in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul of the Washington Post columnist, who was long critical of MBS. The Crown Prince took responsibility but denied any personal involvement. And the Trump administration, despite having access to all the classified details, ignored the law requiring a public intelligence report and instead provided cover for MBS.
And the fact is, maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
There's no direct evidence linking him to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
Now, the Biden administration has said that MBS is responsible, but it's not sanctioning him. Instead, the Treasury Department on Friday announced sanctions against a former senior Saudi intelligence official and an entity known as the Tiger Squad, several of whose members were allegedly among the assassins. Failing to immediately punish MBS comes as a major disappointment to Khashoggi's family and supporters.
I am devastated than ever before. Now I believe he will never come back.
And Jake, I asked the White House to explain why MBS isn't being punished, despite the fact that this report clearly says that he is responsible for this murder. Now, a senior administration official told me that they are fulfilling their obligation to the law and that the goal here is to make sure that something like this can't happen again. Our White House team is also being told that sanctioning MBS was actually never really an option, that it was too complicated, they said, and could have jeopardized the U.S. military interests in Saudi Arabia. Jake, moments ago, we've also heard from the government of Saudi Arabia. They have responded saying that it is, quote, that it completely rejects the assessment in this report submitted to the U.S.'s Congress regarding the murder of Saudi citizen Jamal Khashoggi. Rejection from Saudi Arabia, Jake.
All right, Alex Marquardt, thanks so much. This afternoon, the Washington Post released a statement saying, quote, the man who authorized this brutal murder must be held fully accountable, unquote. Let's bring in Fred Hyatt. He's the editorial page editor at the Washington Post, where he was a colleague of Jamal Khashoggi. Fred, thanks so much for being here. So let's start with the fact that the U.S. government finally released the report, and then we'll get to the fact that they're not calling out MBS. What's your reaction to MBS being called out by the U.S. government to begin with?
Well, thanks for having me, Jake. And, I think it's a step forward. The Post, starting with our publisher, Fred Ryan, and all the way down, we've worked really hard to make sure that this crime is not forgotten and that the people who are responsible are held accountable for two reasons. And naming the people who are responsible is a good first step. And ending the grotesque relationship that existed between the Trump administration and the royal family and the cover-up of the crime is also a good step.
So I want to read one line from the report, quote, the Crown Prince viewed Khashoggi as a threat to the kingdom and broadly supported using violent measures if necessary to silence him. We need to underline this. This is about Khashoggi writing columns, sharing ideas and thoughts in the political mainstream about freedom and the need for democracy. That's the threat that MBS needed to respond to with a bone saw.
That's the threat. And Jamal Khashoggi was a Washington Post columnist, a legal U.S. resident living in Northern Virginia, lured by Saudi diplomats, including the brother of the Crown Prince, who was then the ambassador to the United States, to a consulate in Turkey where he was butchered and dismembered. And by the way, his remains have never been found, which is something else you would think we might be asking for right now. And you're right. What was his threat? He had nothing but the best intentions for Saudi Arabia. He didn't even really want to be considered a dissident. He wanted to promote the reforms that on Sundays the Crown Prince says he is in favor of. And he believed that the way forward for his country was to allow some openness, some debate, and the idea that he was perceived as dangerous tells you a lot about the current regime.
Now, I want to touch on I want to address the fact that Trump made no secret about the fact that he was protecting MBS. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't have involvement, he said, in 2018, et cetera, et cetera. But is there any difference when it comes to just the area of accountability for this brutal dictator, MBS, who had this columnist for the Washington Post murdered? When it comes to accountability, is there any difference in action between Trump and Biden?
It's a fair question. And I was struck this afternoon, Jake, by a statement from the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, who said, those involved in the abhorrent killing of Jamal Khashoggi must be held accountable. Well, now we have in black and white that the United States government thinks the man most responsible is MBS. And is he going to be held accountable? And it matters not just because this was a terrible crime and there should be justice, but because dictators like MBS and like Xi Jinping in China, like Putin, increasingly are reaching across their borders to do this kind of crime. They are going outside their own countries to harass, to kidnap, and to assassinate people they perceive as enemies. And the question is, now that we have a government that, fortunately, thankfully, is committed to democratic values, what is it going to do to change the calculus for dictators like this so that the next time somebody like MBS thinks, should I butcher a peaceful, honorable journalist like Jamal Khashoggi, or should I not? The calculation will be different. And so far, I don't see this administration doing anything that says to MBS, it would be better not to do this.
Yeah, that's very dispiriting. Fred Hyatt, thank you so much. for talking to us on this, what I imagine is a difficult day and disappointing.
Well, we live in hope that this isn't the last we're going to hear from the administration and from other democracies around the world.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it. Does the Biden administration go far enough in punishing MBS for Khashoggi's murder, in the sense that they didn't punish him at all? Next, we're going to talk to Democratic Senator and member of the Armed Services Committee, Tim Kaine. He'll weigh in. Then, we're just a few hours away from the House voting on President Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, but there is some major Democratic backlash aimed at the White House right now. We'll talk to you about that. Stay with us.
Hiring new employees takes a lot of patience. Just finding the right candidates is time-consuming, and quickly filling open positions is an important factor in keeping your business moving. Indeed is the only job site that can move as fast as you do. Indeed.com is the hiring site that helps you find quality candidates with Indeed Instant Match. Indeed searches through the millions of resumes in their database to help show you great candidates instantly. Unlike some hiring sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility, delivering a quality shortlist faster. With Indeed, there are no long-term contracts. You can pause your account at any time, and you only pay for what you need. And Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Want your quality shortlist fast? You need Indeed. Right now, get a free $75 credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/Tapper. That's Indeed.com/Tapper. Offer valid through March 31st. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back with our politics lead. In just a few hours, the House of Representatives is expected to pass a massive coronavirus relief deal to the tune of nearly $2 trillion. But the $15 minimum wage increase was slashed out of the Senate version of the bill at the last second, as CNN's Caitlin Collins reports.
In a matter of hours, the House of Representatives will vote on President Biden's $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill.
As we work toward House passage, we take nothing for granted.
The package is the result of weeks of work by the White House and Democrats.
I'm just going to knock on wood here. Hope that's okay. If the bill passes, I certainly would expect you to hear from the president.
The bill includes $1,400 stimulus checks, extended jobless benefits, an increase to the child tax credit, additional funding for small businesses, and $130 billion for schools. The bill also includes a $15 minimum wage, but Democrats' hopes of passing that were dashed when the Senate parliamentarian ruled it cannot be included, a move Biden predicted weeks ago.
I put it in, but I don't think it's going to survive.
Now progressive Democrats want to take the unlikely step of overruling the parliamentarian, and some, including Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, have even called for her to be fired.
It is unacceptable, I believe, for us to, continue to come up with excuses on why we can't do the right thing on behalf of the American people. When the Republicans are in charge and they have the majority, they do everything that they can.
Although raising the minimum wage was a major campaign promise, the White House said President Biden is, quote, disappointed but won't overrule it.
That is disappointing, actually, to hear the White House say that.
Forced to focus on Plan B, top Senate Democrats are now drafting an amendment that would penalize big companies that pay workers less than $15 an hour. Once the House approves the stimulus bill, it heads to the Senate, where it must be modified to satisfy all 50 Democrats, because if one votes against it, the bill fails.
I'm ready to hear any ideas on what will make the American Rescue Plan better, stronger, and effective. But we'll have to answer who will get helped and who will get hurt.
So, Jake, it's tonight that this vote is set to happen, but we are now learning that several Republicans in the House, mainly ones that are allies of former President Donald Trump, aren't going to be there to vote, because instead they're in Orlando at CPAC. That is that conservative political action conference that you see every year. Former President Trump is expected to speak at it on Sunday. It's really kind of you go and show your face if you want to run for president, if you want to have some kind of future in the party. Instead, they are there. They are going to be missing these votes, so they'll be voting by proxy, Jake. But in order to do that, you have to sign a letter with the House clerk allowing another lawmaker to vote in your direction at your behalf. But when you sign that letter, you have to say, quote, I am unable to physically attend proceedings in the House chamber due to the ongoing public health emergency. But, Jake, they are at a very crowded conference in Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, so they're lying. Caitlin Collins, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Senator, we'll get to the massive COVID relief deal in a moment, but I do want to start with this breaking news on the murder of Jamal